He was quick to laugh and generous with his mirth, but not today. Terrik's eyes were fixed on the trail ahead, his expression stern as he gripped tight to sword and shield, wary of any danger. At the head of their patrol, Lethan scouted the way. In contrast to Terrik, she was the very definition of mirthless. She wore the tan leather garb of a Talon scout, travelling cloak rendering her almost invisible against the dusty landscape. A splint bow was strapped to her back, a clip of bolts on her hip alongside the long hunting knife. Every now and then she would kneel, searching for sign, following the trail like a hunting dog. 3 other troopers of the Manted Battalion marched with them, but, to his shame, Willett had no idea what they were called. In fairness, each of their faces was concealed beneath the visor of a mantis helm, but even so, they were still part of his brood, and he their stalwart priest. Willett was charged with enforcing their faith in the great worms, and when would they need that more than now, out here in the deadly wilds? How was he to provide sacrament without even knowing their names? It reminded him once again of the impossibility of the task he'd been given. Since his first day at Fort Carven, Willett had been ignored and disrespected. The Draconate Ministry had sent him to instill faith in the fort's stout defenders, and Willett had gone about that role with all the zeal his position demanded. It soon became clear no one was going to take him seriously. Over the days and weeks, his sermons had been met with indifference at best, at worst, outright derision. The disrespect had worsened, rising to a tumult, until the occasion when he had drunk deeply from a water skin, only to find it had been filled with tepid piss when he wasn't looking. Had Willett been posted at another fort in another part of the drift, perhaps he would have been received with more enthusiasm. The Corvus at Ravenscrag, or the Ursus Battalion at Fort Arbalus, would have provided him a much warmer welcome. For the Manted Battalion, it seemed faith in the guilds of Torwyn far outweighed faith in the ministry. But what had he truly expected? It was not the Draconate Ministry that fueled the nation's commerce. It was not the legates who built artifice and supplied the military with its arms and armour. It was not Willett Kinloth who had brought about the greatest technological advancements in Torwyn's history. His sudden despondency provoked a groundswell of guilt. As Sophenodon decreed, those who suffer the greatest hardship are due the highest reward. And who was Willett Kinloth to question the wisdom of the Draconate?
"That lookout can't be much farther ahead,"
Terrik grumbled, to himself as much as to anyone else. It was enough to shake Willett from his malaise, forcing him to concentrate on the job at hand. They had first spied their quarry 4 days ago from the battlements of Fort Carven. The figure had been distant and indistinct, and at first the lookouts had dismissed it as a wanderer, lost in the drift. When they spotted the lone figure again a second and third day, there was only one conclusion. The fort was being watched, which could herald a raid from one of the many marauding bands that dogged the border of Torwyn. Raiding parties had been harrying the forts along the drift for centuries. Mostly they were small war bands grown so hungry and desperate they risked their lives to pillage Torwyn's abundant fields and forests. But some were vast armies, disparate tribes gathered together by a warlord powerful enough to threaten the might of the Armiger battalions. No such armies had risen for over a decade, the last having been quelled with merciless violence by a united front of guild, Armiger and ministry. But it still paid to be cautious. If this scout was part of a larger force, it was imperative they be captured and questioned. The ground sloped ever downward as they followed the trail, and the grim sight of Fort Carven was soon lost beyond the ridge behind them. Willett stuck close to Terrik, but the hulking trooper provided less and less reassurance.